but I see you all fine, which is great. So my name is Dr. Roberta Suzette Hunt, and I'm our facilitator for the Equity Advisory Group. Were you going to say something, Janelle?
I wasn't, Dr. Hunt.
Okay. All right. So I think let's begin. So Jake, will you put up our slides and we'll go through our slides and then we'll go into our introductions and whatnot. So next slide, please. Welcome everyone. Closed captions are in English and Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. ibr.news/captions. Next slide. We encourage EAG members to turn on your video. Please say your name when you begin to speak. And if you experience technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-329-6744. Public input instructions. There'll be an opportunity to provide brief public input later in the meeting today. To submit input after the meeting, email comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. So for our agenda, we'll have our icebreaker, our program administrator update, a letter of support for federal grants, program design for the bridge with a focus on the Washington side, public comment, and closeout. And we should finish at 7:30 today. Next slide. So our icebreaker is name and pronouns, your affiliation. What is your favorite park in the Portland, Vancouver area? So what is your favorite park in the Portland, Vancouver area?
And I think it worked pretty well last time if folks can just use the raise hand feature so that we get just the EAG members. That'd be great.
All right. Darcy, please set us off.
Well, hey everyone. Many of you probably don't know me. I'm actually sitting in for Miriam Halliday, who is our CEO, who's out on extended leave right now. But my name's Darcy Hoffman. I'm with Workforce Southwest Washington. My pronouns are she and her. And favorite park, there's so many amazing ones, but one that I went to recently that I'd never been to before was Whipple Creek Park by the fairgrounds here in Clark County. It was amazing. It's like hundreds of acres of almost like hiking trails. It was just beautiful and surprising to have it just right here.
Awesome. Meg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Johnson, she, her pronouns, and I'm a private citizen here in Clark County. I just wanted to give a voice for the public here on the Washington side. I'm happy to be here. My favorite park is actually walking distance from my house. It's in Clark County proper, so not in the city limits of Vancouver. Tiger Tree Park. It is one of the most wooded parks in Clark County, and it is absolutely lovely to walk around. So bring your kids and let them play on the playground, and you get to walk around this forested walking trail. It's really lovely.
Thank you. This is like an advertisement for where we live. It's pretty cool. All right, John and then Shane.
Good evening, everybody. John Gardner with TriMet. My pronouns are he, him, his. A park that I have a ton of really good memories with the family is Peninsula Park over in Northeast Portland. Has everything, rose gardens, sports fields, and just nice kid stuff.
Thanks. Shane.
Dang it, John, you took my park. Yeah, that park's like a 10-minute walk for me. But I'll swap over to another park. I'm gonna go with when I have family in town or friends in town, I like to take them to Mount Tabor, get a little picnic together, climb up all the stairs to the top, and have that nice west-facing view of downtown Portland and sort of all the city kind of amidst all the trees. I think that's my pick. And I'm Shane Valley. I work for the Portland Bureau of Transportation as a transportation planner there. He, him.
Thank you. Sabrina and then Vicky.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina Owens-Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm work for Metro. And one of my favorite parks is Wilshire Park. We like to go take like a picnic, and there's lots of open space for the kids to run around. And just being from Colorado, Portland knows how to do, or the whole region knows how to do parks. The trees are amazing.
It is Vicky.
Good afternoon. I'm Vicky Nakashima, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm one of the founders of Partners in Diversity, a nonprofit that's been working on issues of diversity in the workforce for over almost 20 years now. My new favorite park, I just figured out how to pronounce it, is Con Amask, which is in the Cully neighborhood. And it's a very small park. And I went to a free concert put on by Parks and Recreation there about maybe 3 weeks ago. And I was just amazed how much fun they can put into less than a full block of land. It had everything, things to climb on, a place for concert and stage, and the IBR had a booth there. They had several community booths, but I really liked that compact park, and I appreciated that it was in a new neighborhood in Portland.
Thank you. Yes. All right. So who else needs to go? Who are other EAG members?
I can call you out if you want.
Hey, this is Hai. For now, he, him. I'm the admin of a big Vietnamese community Facebook group in Portland. So my favorite park in Portland area is Mount Tabor. I like it because of the two big reservoir. Make it very cool during the summertime. So I can go there with my wife, just lay there and enjoy the weather or read a book.
Thank you. Next up. Let's see.
Hi, this is Soko, Dr. Hunt, sorry. He and his pronouns. Work with the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization at Pacific Islander Asian Family Center. And one of my favorite parks in Portland is the Markham Hill Nature Park. It's a little bit off from the rest of Forest Park. Just really great trails around that area. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Leanne.
Well, it's been a hard one. It's been a long time since I've visited parks. My kids have grown and played many years of sports. So I was just trying to think of, I know there's the one over here in Vancouver, is the dinosaur themed park that I know my nephews, when they do come over, we like to go hang out there. So that's fun for them. Oh, I'm sorry, and I'm Leanne Caver with C-Tran, it's she, her from.
Thanks. Next up. Do we have everybody?
Seeing Barbie.
It's on the, okay, Barbie.
I am Barbie Alexander. I use she, her pronouns, and I work with the Port of Portland. My favorite park is Harrison Park, which is attached to Harrison Park School. And there is absolutely nothing special about this park except for that I was the president of the Little League there for the last 8 years. And there is a snack shack there, and I spend a lot of time cleaning the field and making sure that it's safe. It's in Southeast Portland near Mount Tabor. And just really because it's the center of the community, and every spring seeing the kids and the families and grandpa and grandma and cousins come out and watch practice and come together and communities talk. It really is nothing better. So that's why I love it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Oh, I think we
Sorry
lost.
about that.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. I swiped left and swiped myself out, but I got my picture back. So those are good things. All right, so why don't we go to our program administrator report? So, because let's go with, so to Greg Johnson.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to take administrator's privilege. I don't know the parks around this area very well. I like Esther Short Park as an urban park. So I'm going to pick a park in Michigan. So if you're ever in Detroit, go to Belle Isle, which is a park that was designed by Olmsted, the same gentleman who designed Central Park. It is an absolutely lovely park in an urban setting. It sits right in the middle of the Detroit River. So absolutely lovely. But the parks that I have been around here in this area are absolutely stunning as well. So what's been going on? A couple weeks ago, we had our bi-state legislative meeting where this was the first meeting we had had in 7 months. So we had a very robust conversation to get those folks caught up with everything that's gone on. So they asked very good questions. It was a very well-attended session, and they are very, gave us great compliments on where we are at in the program. So we continue, we're going to meet with them again, probably in late September, early October. But once again, they are interested. They've done their job, and now they're looking to us to make sure that we are getting this program up and running. So you're going to hear a lot of the things later in presentations of what the team is working on to assure that we are getting things done. One of the key things you're going to hear in the next presentation is about some of the grant applications we're putting in. And once again, I think that the local funding, getting that ready is great. Now we have to go to our federal partners and get our federal funding in place. So that's going to be our next huge challenge. So we are still out in the community making presentations and going to events. So we made a presentation at the Washington State Transportation Commission, the Columbia River Economic Development Corporation, the downtown stakeholders. So we present to them on a regular basis. Washington County Transportation Task Force. So these are all things that are critical that we have the support. whether it's in letters for grants, whether it's talking to legislators, all of those things are important. So we are talking to a wide variety of folks. So the Vancouver Transportation and Mobility Commission, Lower Columbia River Harbor Safety Committee, Institute of Transportation Engineers, some of our team members did an excellent presentation before that national conference that was here in the Portland area. We had folks down at the Oregon Trucking Association. We had a booth down there and it was well received. We've been going to different neighborhood association meetings to make sure that the neighborhoods are not left behind on where we are at on some of the information. We have a busy tour schedule coming up. We had 2 tours last week with one with the media and one with the transit group that was in town for a conference. But we also have our federal partners coming in this week to take a tour of the bridge and the surrounding areas. So we're still at a number of the community summer events. We were at the big biking event in Portland, and we continue to show up wherever we are asked to be, wherever whether we're wanted or not wanted, we're showing up and bringing the information to folks. One of the key things that we have also started, we have opened up office hours. So this is for folks who want to come by our office and get a better understanding of what the program is about. They can sit with some of our technical experts and ask questions and find out where the program is at. They can look at the footprint maps. They can look at all of the things that we have developed to date. So those office hours we think are a great outreach tool to make sure that the community has access to the team and understands what's going on. One of the other ways we are also getting out into the community and leveraging our some of the partners, we have what we call our community-based organization mini grants. So this is, I think, our either second or third round of grant applications that are open, where we give a small grant so these community-based organizations can reach out to their members and bring them up to speed on where the program is at. This is going to be more critical than ever since late this year, early next year, we're going to be putting the draft supplemental out, and we need to make sure that folks are aware and how they can weigh in on it. So a lot of good things happening. The team is still busy. We have some editorials coming up. We've been doing some national media because the national media is interested in what this project is and what we're doing here. So we're going to have an editorial in the Oregonian coming up, I think, later this week. So once again, to stress the importance of this project for this region. So those are just a few of the things that's going on. The team is still grinding on design and urban design issues. We are the environmental team is getting ready for the release of the draft supplemental. Once again, either late this year, early next year. So it's going to be, once again, a busy time as we go into that public comment period of 60 days. We have to respond to every comment that comes in. So that's going to be a busy time for the team. But once again, we have a great group of professionals that are working towards this goal. And the goal is to be having a shovel in the ground in 2025. The bridge itself, will not start in earnest in 2020 until 2026, but we have a number of early work contracts that we think we may be able to get underway in 2025. So with that, I will stop and take any questions or concerns that this group may have. So one other issue that that I did not touch on, we are starting the community benefits discussion. So this is also going to be a tremendously important part. So we are creating a community benefits advisory group, and that group will be looking at the impacts of a mega project on the community, how we can mitigate for some of those impacts overall. So this team will be an important part of making sure that that community benefits discussion is well-rounded, that it is looked at through the lens of equity that this team has created, the equity framework. So there will be some great conversations, and we'll be bringing that information back to this group as we are developing it. So with that, I'll be quiet again and see if there's any questions or concerns that anyone wants to bring up.
Vicki.
What is the range of the CBO grants, and what is the time period that you're looking at between September?
So I am going to get it wrong. So I am going to ask Salome, I think, who has been in charge of that, to talk to us about it.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So the grants are going to be open until September 10th. The range that folks can apply for is pretty wide because we are doing tiered grants like we did last time. So there's $2,000, $5,000, and $10,000. And you will all be receiving an email with messaging around the details, along with links that you can then share out with other groups or organizations that you know. And one thing to note about the grants is that folks have to be a 501c3 or be fiscally sponsored by one. And so we wanted to make sure that it was inclusive to groups of all sizes, hence the tiers and the fiscal sponsorship capability. So that's the answer.
So Salome, is this our second or third round of grants?
This is our second round, and then we'll be doing another round after the public comment period of the draft SEIS. And so we're in the second round right now, and we've already distributed over 250 emails to folks, letting them know about the grant application, and are sending another batch of 270 so within the next couple days here.
Excellent.
Salome, would you mind sharing just kind of the quick synopsis of what the application entails?
Yeah. So the application, we kept it low barrier because that has been very successful with us in the past. So it's just a page long. We ask folks information in regards to who are the communities in which they serve, how they get information to those community members, and just some basic questions to help us understand the org a little bit better. And so we try to make sure that we can package this as customizable as possible because we really want the organizations to focus on outreach, to whereas we focus more on the logistics and providing staff. And so this is really helpful for orgs who are of any size. We had a lot of success with our miniature grants on our last round. It totaled in almost 400 different engagements, all of which were folks who were newly engaged with the program. And so this time around, we're hoping to get some more of that magic and reach more community members.
And maybe just to add a little additional commentary, the EAG has helped the program really stand up an equity framework. And this is just another example of how we're really working to sort of operationalize the process side of our equity definition, is really working with culturally specific community-based organizations as well as community-based organizations who are connected to our equity priority communities to ensure that there's this two-way opportunity of both receiving information as well as disseminating information.
Thank you, John L. I'll also add that per a lot of that equity framework and recommendations, the grant dollars are, how can I put this? They are not tied necessarily to the work that organizations do. They're general fund dollars. And so organizations can choose to do what they will with the money. And also a part of the grant money is that we take on logistical costs. So we pay for the translations. We also provide compensation for folks who engage in the meetings and groups that are listed in the deliverables. So the organization does get to keep 100% of the grant dollars within the organization, and they don't have to spend any on logistical things. And we provide Zoom space if folks want to do it virtual or hybrid. And so we really try to keep the cost low for the organizations and close to zero to participate in these grants. So that way they can keep the money that they're awarded to do programming.
All right. Excellent. So any other questions or concerns about the status of the program? All right, seeing none, Dr. Hunt, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so next up, Jake is going to talk with us about the infrastructure grant letters of support. So Jake, close the loop.
Yeah, so thank you all for those of you who provided some edits to the draft letter. We have provided that letter as part of the application, which is, I believe, was submitted today. And as a reminder, it's one of our huge, it's called the mega grant. It's a huge federal grant application. Close to maybe $1 billion. Greg, please correct me if I'm wrong on the figures, but a significant chunk of the project cost.
We are applying for $600 million under this mega grant application.
600
so
million.
Tremendously important.
And so just wanted to thank you all on that piece. I think it's having a group like this on the project. I think is pretty critical. One of the big points of emphasis on that grant application and the criteria was, how is your project centering equity? How is it furthering? There's an initiative called the Justice 40 initiative that the Biden administration is implementing, and that's really meant to make projects like this more equitable, have dollars reach small businesses, to have the workforce be diverse and representative of communities. So yeah, just wanted to say that, see if there were any lingering questions about that. And yeah.
Jake, I'd just like to add that our internal equity team, headed up by Espousal, did an excellent job of providing a write-up on the activities that we're doing to meet the federal expectations on a mega project. So I had the opportunity to read through the language, and I thought it was tremendously well done and reflects a lot of the work that was done here in this advisory group. So once again, great job for everyone all around.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, and maybe if I could just build upon that, Greg. I think what has been interesting for me as we've been reviewing United States Department of Transportation criteria is how much of the emphasis has been on equity. And just kudos to the Equity Advisory Group for, I think this was one of the first committees that we chartered, helping us develop equity definition and equity framework and equity criteria. All of that really came together and just highlighted how we really are working in tandem with you as well as our community partners, attempting to lean in on equity. And I think US DOT is looking across the nation at programs that are doing that. But B, it was for me as principal equity officer, just a kind of recognition of how this group is really continuing to, frankly, lead the way nationally in terms of how do we really conceptualize and think about equity within the context of a mega project. So really the credit is all of you for helping to bring us along.
That's it from me, Dr. Hunt. So pass it back to you.
Good work. All right, so we get time with Casey Lyles and Shilpa Malam to talk about the program design with a focus on the Washington side. So take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. I'll go first. Hello, everyone. I'm Shilpa Malam. I'm the design manager on the IBR program. And along with Casey, we'll be going through the Washington side of the investments that we're looking at in the draft SEIS. And Emily, do you mind if I share my screen? Thank you. Find that. Can you all see my screen? Okay. Yep. Thank you. So just to recap from last time and from a few of the other meetings, we're looking at, like Greg mentioned, we're looking at a draft SEIS document coming out later this year, and we want to go through what we're studying in the draft SEIS. So you, as well as the community, is prepared to provide us with comments and feedback when the draft does get published later this year. So we have the modified LPA on the left side, which includes improving active transportation facilities and connections throughout the program area. We are extending light rail from Expo in Oregon to Vancouver Evergreen Boulevard. We're also looking to provide bus on shoulder for the express bus. The light rail extension comes with 3 new transit stations, one on Hayden Island, one on the waterfront, and one at Evergreen, and on to 2 park and rides. And Casey's going to go through the locations of the park and rides in a few minutes. We're, of course, also replacing bridges over the Columbia River and the North Portland Harbor. And we are looking at modifying and improving the 7 interchanges that we have in the corridor. We are maintaining 3 lanes in each direction. That's what we have today. So in the future, we are maintaining 3 lanes in each direction, but looking at adding 1 auxiliary lane in each direction between interchanges as needed. So this is the locally preferred alternative, has these elements, but then we have some design options we're studying. And the design options on the right, we're looking at the configuration of the Columbia River bridges, like what kind of bridge would, what kind of bridge should it be? And that what we're evaluating is a movable span, a single level, and a double level, or a stacked option. We're looking at different options for how C Street ramps connect to and from I-5 in the Vancouver area. We're looking at operations and safety, but we're looking at 1 aux lane with the modified LPA, but we're also looking at areas where we might need 2 aux lanes. And we're looking at the parking ride locations. We have different locations we're studying to see which ones are needed and how they would fit. We're also looking at one more option that's not here, but we'll go through on the map, is the shift in the alignment in Vancouver to kind of balance the impacts, the different kinds of impacts we may have as we go through the draft SEIS. So, but before we go into the roadmap, which Casey will go in, want to go back to what we heard in the last 2 meetings. And I want to bring the slide up again about what we heard in June. You know, in June, we were talking more details about the urban design and the investments, but we heard from you that we need to understand, have more discussion about the investment before we zoom in to the user perspective. That we also want to understand how the equity framework is being applied and how it impacts people who are living in the project footprint and people traveling here. So we pivoted last time and we went through the investments in the Oregon area, and we showed our program area. I think we had like one example of how we're thinking maybe about equity, and we talked about the equity council that we are setting up, but also Casey went through some of the existing, how we access the interstate today versus how we would be accessing it in the future. So thank you for this feedback. So we said we do the same, we'll follow the same format and show all the improvements in the Vancouver area and the bridge area. So I'll go through some of the thought process that went into it. Again, it's not extensive. It's still like the equity and design is still a process. We're working through it. We're learning as we go. And as we go through the process, we still find areas where we think we need to add investments or adjust them. And that's going to continue through the design and construction as well, to minimize impacts, but also improve accessibility to everybody. So similarly, similar to last time, we looked, I'm using the same example this time too, looking at the area demographics in here. This is the Vancouver area. You can see the race, the age, the income, the disability, housing, how many people own versus how many people rent in this area, and then transportation to work, and the vehicles available. So this is similar to what we looked at in Oregon, but the data obviously is different. But it still boils down to this similar conclusions for us. If you're looking from a transportation network standpoint, is we have a variety of people. We have people who work from home, who take transit, who walk. And I guess here in Vancouver, in our data, again, we'll be updating this data as we get new information, is almost like no one bikes. But that doesn't mean that they might not in the future, or the land use might not change. So from this, we still say like we still need a system that is accessible for all ages and abilities. And one thing that is also different from Oregon and Washington is transit. So in the whole Oregon section of the project area, we had program area. We looked at transit. It was elevated transit, light rail transit, and we had the bus routes. Here we have a program area where we have the transit terminal at Evergreen, and then we still have a program area that goes north of it. So that is very critical for us to work with our transit partner in the north, with CTRAN, to see how we can provide accessibility, transit accessibility from the other areas using bus rapid transit or existing buses, bus and shoulders for them to travel further down south into the program area or access the transit stations we're looking at in Evergreen and Waterfront, so they're able to make those transfers. And that's not just transit transfers. We also need to look at how they can walk or bike if they would like to get to the transit and cross the river. So it's similar to what we saw before, but also like different. And those are different things we're trying to look at and trying to understand where those gaps might be and how we can connect people through those gaps. I also have this, and I might lean on Jake a little bit to provide this information, is this came from the census, and you might have looked at I think last year when we looked at our equity priority areas. Now, equity priority areas, as like IBR defined, it is equity priority communities are those who have experienced or have experienced discrimination and exclusion based on identity or status, such as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people with disabilities, communities with limited English proficiency, persons with lower income, houseless individuals and families, immigrants and refugees, young people, older adults. So the boundaries that you see in purple are the areas that we've identified as equity priority areas in the program. So this is also where we need to, again, look at like what are the gaps right now, what could be the gaps in the future, and how in transportation and how we connect them. connect them in the communities, but also like how do we connect them to the infrastructure that we are proposing. This is also something we showed last time for Oregon, so showing the same thing, trying to understand how many people are staying within the program area, how many people are traveling away from the program area for jobs, and how many people are coming into the program area from outside to access jobs. Again, one of the examples of what we're looking at. Okay, I will hand this over to Casey, but before that, I wanted to mention about the Equity Council also, is that when we have these meetings, our plan is to document like the outcomes from the equity councils. We'll have people from all disciplines in there, so we hope to have a diverse feedback into the design, but also we'd like to start documenting what we're doing so we're able to communicate what we're doing to you as well as the public on the intersection between design and equity. So that, Casey, I can either keep going or you can share the screen. Let's stop.
Shilpa, why don't you keep sharing your couple pictures of the screen, if you don't mind. That way I don't have to transition to the PowerPoint, which I struggle with on here. And then also just checking with Dr. Hunt, if you want to pause for a minute and ask any questions, or I don't know if I saw any.
I didn't see any. I think keep going.
Great. Well, thank you. Good evening. My name is Casey Lyles, he, him, and I'm the delivery manager for the IBR program. And I'm going to take you through, walk you through, similar to a meeting that we had before, talk through what the improvements are for the program area that are being studied in NEPA. But I also want to talk about, why we're here in the first place, the existing facilities, and just kind of a few snapshots of what things look like as existing facilities today. So this is a snapshot of the north end of the northbound I-5 bridge structure. You can see the bicycle and pedestrian facilities that comes off of the bridge. There's very narrow walkway there, both on the bridge, and then also there's a short walkway that goes down to stairs, actually, after a steep grade, and stairs that go down to the street. To the left, there's a little bit of a longer path that goes in and around a building and down to the street, if you know where you're going. So each of those is kind of a know you find your way. Also, the sidewalk, as you see going across the bridge, is about enough room for one and maybe two adults walking side by side. That's a stretch, but a bicycle and a pedestrian walking or passing each other's. A pedestrian usually has to move over to one side and allow a bicycle to go across, or someone rolling. Next slide, Shilpa. A couple of other pictures of things in and around I-5. This is a little bit further north in Vancouver, looking west across I-5. So this is a bridge at 33rd Street. And part of this is looking at the existing facility for both the facility that's there for the active transportation. You have a pretty narrow sidewalk with a small parapet wall for the cars and a pedestrian rail. Have no striping on the roadway that would indicate bicycles, so they'd probably likely just be on their own to share the space on the outer edge of that. Those are the type of things that we'd be looking at, of course. And then as this bridge and others within the program are being replaced, those are all the things that we want to address to make it an inviting space for people to access and move across the freeways, as opposed to it being a barrier or a non-attractive connection. Next slide, Shilpa. I think the next one's at 29th Street. Similarly, a bridge that's to be replaced. Very similar, the connections on both sides of the river with narrow sidewalks. Local street connectivity, of course, but again, these are our opportunities to connect the neighborhoods east and west of the freeway without I-5 being a barrier. Not just neighborhoods, of course. That means all services for those walking, biking, rolling, and of course driving too. Next slide, Shilpa. The last slide I have here is just reflecting that we do have, there is existing express bus service on I-5. Of course, it uses the same lanes that all of the other traffic does as it crosses the river. Wanted to point that out. The express bus service that does cross the river uses the traffic and gets the same congestion that other commuters are exposed to. With that, I think I'm going to transition to the roll map. I'll start sharing and make sure get something successful on this tonight. Give it a moment for it to start, actually. That doesn't look like it's sharing the right screen.
We can see your screen.
Can you see my pointer also, Shilpa?
Yes.
Great. Well, so to reorient, again, this is our project area role map, or area map located on our website. On our website, you would follow the technical documents tab on the homepage and go to the LPA, and the first document listed under the LPA is actually the area role map, the program area map. So again, orientation of the role map. This is a shot of Vancouver, and I'll move through the investments in the program area, talking about, again, the bridge and all of those investments in Vancouver. These are, again, showing the investments that are being studied in our draft supplemental environmental impact statement. The improvements shown here do not represent final design. The improvements that I talked through are conceptual level design only at this point, but I'll walk through those, especially in relation to the existing facilities and what's being improved. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit towards the waterfront in Vancouver. Let's see if I can make sure to navigate well. We'll zoom in on the waterfront and SR 14. I'll talk a little bit about the bridges first. The bridges Shilpa mentions, we have 3 different bridge configurations being studied in NEPA. That includes the single level bridge, a double level or stack bridge, and a movable span bridge. What's reflected on the road map here is a double level bridge, and actually, I'm sorry, I'm zoomed back out again. There's also a single level bridge in it, what's called a little pop out box up above. And scrolling just a little bit slow. You can see in this pop out to the upper side, a single level bridge option. You might ask, what difference do I see? Looking at them, a single level bridge has the bicycle and pedestrian and active transportation facilities at the same level as the vehicles, and also the transit that's on the northbound bridge, and on the southbound bridge, you have transit at the same level as the vehicles. So one level of the freeway. So you can see in the upper diagram, the bright green, or on the northbound bridge, you can see the active transportation facility to the upstream or east side of the new bridge area. And on the south side, you see the transit line, or kind of a brownish orangish lines on the outside. We'll focus back in on the double level bridge picture just to reflect the difference there. You don't see the active transportation facility on the north side. That's underneath the north bridge. You can see the red lines under the southbound bridge for transit. So that's the stacked version. And then, of course, the movable span is like the upper option, the single level bridge, but with a bridge opening over the primary channel there, host by primary channel. The bridge, as it comes across into Vancouver, all bridges come across into Vancouver and go over the top of BNSF If you're familiar with the area today, it comes across into Vancouver and goes underneath currently BNSF. And then that also is showing the active transportation facility as it comes across into Vancouver, a connection of a ramp system that comes down from the bridge to touch down at the waterfront. And it does take some fair distance in that because it is in the range of 70 to 80 plus feet or in that vicinity, depending on the bridge configuration. It does take some length to get down to make sure that the grade coming off of the bridge is accessible for by ADA standards. Also shown for active transportation facility is some of the reference that I made earlier about I-5 being a barrier. You see on the north side of BNSF, familiar old Apple Tree Park, we're reflecting a connection of active transportation over to a new local street extension of Main Street down to the riverfront to Columbia Way that's realigned. So it's a little hard to see under the bridge here, but the Main Street extends from 5th Street, where my cursor is, down to the waterfront at Columbia Way. And again, with active transportation on the streets, as well as the connection over to Apple Tree Park. The transit alignment that comes across the river, light rail transit is reflecting the waterfront station here shown in the yellow, just around the location of the intersection of Columbia Street and Columbia Way, and also in the vicinity of BNSF. That's the waterfront station, the terminus station of light rail. As light rail extends to the north on this elevated guideway, comes back into I-5 and Evergreen Street, Evergreen Boulevard, excuse me, with this transit station at the same elevation as Evergreen Boulevard. It's elevated one level above the freeway, just like Evergreen Boulevard, but at the same level as Evergreen. So with all the surrounding area, it's at a similar level. Also with transit, they're showing, we're showing the improvements of what we're studying in NEPA again is from 0 to 2 park and rides that go with the transit stations shown in Vancouver. Shilpa mentioned options of park and rides, and the options are really that there are 3 different locations on the waterfront for park and rides. You see on the far west side or to the top of the page, this rather pink colored block showing one location, a second location more towards the terminus of SR14, the end of SR14 where it meets Columbia Street. And then the third one is a little hard to see on this map. In fact, it's really hard to see. The third one is reflected as underneath I-5, sandwiched between the Columbia Way and BNSF. So a structure underneath for parking. So those would be the Evergreen park and ride options, location options. There's 2 locations as options for park and rides at the Evergreen. Did I say Evergreen in the last one? At the waterfront. Evergreen Station has 2 options for locations. The primary option, sorry, excuse me, not primary. The one on the right, more north, is the library, what's called Library Square Park and Ride, Library Square development. Most of the area shown in pink is undeveloped, with the exception of there is a parking lot on the east side of that, close to the freeway there for the current library parking that's there. And then the other option is shown is a lot just southwest of that. And there is currently a building there with existing parking around it. That's parking that's currently shared with the building, as well as like cinema parking. The park and rides themselves are all envisioned to have different applications of those sites being used, and the point I'm trying to make is some are all of them would be a discussion about being coordinated with existing or planned development, and some would be potentially above ground or underground, so depending on the use of the area. Also, next to the Evergreen transit station, you see a gray block that's outlined going across the freeway, and that is a representation of a community connector or a lid across the freeway. That lid would be an active transportation only facility, reconnecting the communities on both sides, and in some conjunction with both the transit station and Evergreen as it crosses and into the national park on the east side. And I think that's covered it for the transit. The other part I wanted to coordinate or mention the transit, of course, is the stations, park and rides, the bus service, coordinating closely on the local bus service, the bus rapid transit from CTRAN, as well as the active transportation connections through the program area. As I move north, I'm going to stick on active transportation and move northward the program. Then I'll come back and talk about the vehicles, the roadways. Mill Plain Boulevard interchange. You see active transportation connections, making sure that there's good connections east-west across the freeway, as well as into Marshall Community Center Park area. And again, making sure that the I-5 is not a barrier to that attractiveness for people who want to bike and roll. Very similar to 4th Lane Boulevard interchange. Today, there are some facilities that are less than desirable today, and want to make sure that those are addressed as we replace the structures and provide that east-west connectivity. And I mentioned 29th and 33rd Streets overpasses as well. Again, these are conceptual designs, and more work to do to come to make sure that we are addressing those needs in the program area for both transportation, walking, biking, rolling, and the transit connectivity. And let me walk through the improvements for the roadways. I'm going to scroll back south to SR 14. Hope I'm not going too fast here, making people sick. All right. So I'm zoom in on SR 14 a little bit and talk about the movements, what exists today, and how things change within the program and the improvements. One of the biggest changes, of course, in the program area for SR 14 is again that as the freeway comes across the river, it goes over the top of BNSF and then gets back to grade at around about 6th Street. When I say grade, about down to existing the freeway level. One thing I didn't mention on this graphic is just a reminder that the darker black and the darker green for active transportation, those are representing facilities that are more on the ground level, not on a bridge structure, for instance. So the lighter gray, again, on a bridge structure, you're getting high enough to be, it's not on the ground anymore, or it has to go over another facility. Again, SR 14, and go through movements today as they exist. If you're coming westbound, let's say from Camas, in on SR 14, you've got 3 options today. If you stay left today, you're going to go to I-5 southbound. That takes a loop ramp, connects up with the ramp from Washington Street downtown, and they connect on to I-5. And they connect on right very close to the bridgehead. There's a very short distance to get on the freeway. With the improvements, if you want to, let me go back. Sorry. If you stay in the middle lane with the existing facility, you go into downtown up to C Street, and you end here at 6th Street or 7th and C Street. And if you stay in the far right lane, you head to I-5 northbound. Very similar movements, maybe a little bit different locations though. So with the change for I-5 for interstate bridge replacement, if you stayed left, you'd actually go into downtown Vancouver, ending here at the intersection of Columbia Street and Phil Arnold Way. That's both the incoming from SR 14 into downtown, and it's also outgoing from downtown to eastbound SR 14. So there's the in and out of downtown using SR 14. Again, today, in from SR 14 ends at C Street. Outbound SR 14 comes off of Washington Street, just where my cursor is. That is a middle lane that heads south and immediately turns east to SR 14. If you're going to, let's see, westbound 14 to southbound I-5, you stay in the middle lane, or right lane here, middle lane, take the loop ramp and get onto I-5 southbound after connecting up with the on-ramp from downtown. And if you want to go I-5 north, that's the same movement that is there today. One difference with the movement, and I'll talk about this in just a moment, is there's a little different configuration between Mill Plain and SR 14 on I-5, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. That's SR 14 coming into town and also to I-5. From I-5 to SR 14, you have the same movement southbound to eastbound as well as westbound to northbound I-5. If you're coming from Portland and wanting to head to eastbound SR 14, you have the same first exit coming off the bridge and taking the right. If you're familiar with that, that's a very sharp right turn. It's no need to get across the bridge today. Very short and very sharp curve there. Also has a lot of vertical curve in it as well. And then if you're coming southbound, or excuse me, I think I covered the southbound already. So I think that's everything on SR 14. That's a lot to go through. Do I need to pause for a moment? Any confusion or questions? Hope I didn't confuse.
Yeah, it feels like a good time for questions or thoughts. Or
great.
Nay.
It's always me with the first question.
I love it. I love that about you. I can depend on you.
Yes, very much so. For the I-5 North going on to SR 14 East, is there going to be a dedicated lane just for that interchange? Is that what I'm seeing on the map here?
So
as opposed to like, you know, being on the current bridge and then just making a sharp right turn and then suddenly you're on SR 14.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that I didn't mention right off the bat. With this locally preferred alternative we're studying, it includes 3 through lanes and 1 auxiliary lane, and that's really measured and talking about across the river. So that auxiliary lane allows the traffic that's moving between these closely spaced interchanges the ability to both get up to speed and also to get off onto these ramps without one. It effectively helps those movements occur not in the main 3 lanes of through traffic, right? With the closely spaced interchange, it doesn't increase the distance of those between the interchanges, but it helps with the movements between those. So what you're asking about is there an additional lane? And the answer is yes, with one auxiliary lane, there's an additional lane there. We are actually studying the second option of two auxiliary lanes as well in the NEPA. So with both of those, there
Okay.
is an additional either one or two auxiliary lanes to help make that movement. The other part of that is, again, I mentioned kind of the short distance of these ramps. Today, they're either a sharp curve or they have a slow, or excuse me, a short section to get up to speed, for instance, on the on-ramps. And those are things that we would address through design, is making sure that there's that, at least the distance, and that's aided by a couple of different design tools that we use, including auxiliary lanes. And I'll talk a little bit more about collector distributors. That's a fancy name for a side part of a freeway, a side street on the freeway. And then also braided ramps is another tool that we use. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But yes, your answer is accurate. There's additional lane there to help make the movements.
Okay. Is it a follow-up question? Is it going to be similar to the dedicated lane, if you know it, on 205 heading south from Mill Plain? That one has hundreds of feet that are completely separate from the freeway, but is exiting onto Mill Plain. Is it like that, where it's going to be completely separate and you have to make the decision to get on that exit way before it actually happens?
This exit would not be like that. So that exit is actually, it's a braided ramp system, and it braids with the other ramps that are, or the interchanges that are there. So there's a ramp from, I think it's 28th that comes on and goes southbound, and that doesn't mix with it. It's braided over the top of that off ramp to Mill Plain. So in this case,
not like that.
this is just a simple off ramp.
Okay.
It is come out of an auxiliary lane, but it's just a simple off ramp.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. We do have some braided ramps like that, though. I will describe those in just a minute. Shilpa has some add.
Yeah, I just want to add, so I think we mentioned this last time, we're still working on some videos to show how these movements work from like one location to the other, that we should be able to see for active transportation as well as roadways. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll see some of those videos so they can communicate how these movements work. Another one I wanted to mention was Casey mentioned all the green that we see here as active transportation. The ones that you see in green are also called like shared use paths, where you can walk and bike. So you have a bikeway, two-way bikeway, as well as a walkway. But what we also have throughout the program area is active transportation connections, like that gray that is not really visible. And that's also why we're hoping to have those videos that highlight, I think we're trying to highlight everything in green, so you can see that we do have sidewalks along all the local roadways that are not really, they don't really show up on this properly on these maps. So it's we have the shared use paths in green, but you also have sidewalks as well as bike lanes on the local roads throughout the program area.
Thanks for bringing that up, Shilpa. Excellent. Well, if there's no other questions, I can move a little bit north, and I'll actually talk about some of those tools that we're using for effectively making the distance between interchanges a little bit better for the movements for vehicles as they go between. They need to make their choices, whether they're getting on or off or weaving with traffic. So between SR14 and Mill Plain interchange, each side of the freeway has a collector distributor, and what that is actually it's a separated roadway from the main line. So the movements that are being made are off of the main lanes. So as an example, if you're coming southbound on I-5 today, and you're passing by Mill Plain and you want to go to SR14, you stay in the right lane. There's 3 lanes today. And immediately after the Mill Plain interchange ramp comes on, it comes on in its own lane. It's an auxiliary lane actually between Mill Plain and SR14. people that are intending on southbound I-5 need to jockey for position with those people getting on from Mill Plain, so that you can get into the right lane and get off to SR 14. With the IBR improvements, you're actually getting off of the freeway before you get to Mill Plain on ramp. And once you get onto that separate side road there, it's still a higher speed, but you're only mixing with then those traffic from Mill Plain, and you're doing it in a location that you don't have people on your left side, for instance, going by at a higher speed. And so you have a much better time of making your decisions without friction with those other folks. And it's between you and the folks coming on at Mill Plain. And this can be done at a little bit slower speed instead of being pressured and pushed from other traffic around you on I-5. Similarly, they have opportunities from Mill Plain to get on, make those transitions and get over before they reconnect up with I-5 south of the exit to SR14. So that's a collector distributor. Get people off, help them make their decisions separate from the main line through lanes. The Mill Plain interchange, again, to effectively work with, again, these are designed for our future traffic volumes. I think I didn't mention our 2045 future design volumes. So keep in mind what most people see and relate to today, and add traffic for an additional 20 years. The replacement of the Mill Plain interchange, very similar form, but again, addressing the transportation needs of today and the future, both for those mainline connections, active transportation connections. Going to move northward. Similarly at 4th Lane and Boulevard, addressing the active transportation facilities. It's actually shown with a very similar form as it is today, but also addressing the some what we call the geometrics of the roadways, the curvature of some of the ramps, trying to maximize the efficiency of those ramps getting on into auxiliary lanes. And also the connections of active transportation as they go across the freeway and interact with the intersections on both sides of the freeway. North of 4th Lane, I'll pause a little bit, or I'll talk a little bit longer about this area. North of 4th Lane in the southbound direction, I have to zoom out just a little bit. In the southbound direction, I mentioned all the tools to help with our closely spaced interchanges. This is a braided ramp, and I think it was Meg that asked about this, about 205. This is the braided ramp where if you're coming I-5 southbound and you want to get to either 39th Street or 4th Lane Boulevard, you take the same exit, one exit, before you get to 39th. Go underneath 39th, as it does today for 39th Street. And then you have a choice to go to 39th or to continue on to go to 4th Lane. And this is where the braid occurs. If you're going to 4th Lane, you go underneath the new revised on-ramp from 39th Street. You go underneath that on the outside of the lanes and connect to 4th Lane. And what this does is it takes the interaction between those 4th Lane movements, southbound I-5 to 4th Lane. It takes that interaction that occurs in the short distance with a very high volume of traffic that's coming on from State Route 500 and 39th Street, and it separates those two bits of traffic so that there isn't that connection or that interaction between, and again, this very short distance between SR 500 and 4th Lane. It does result in some differences in travel, though. I would point that out. So if you're coming westbound on SR 500 and you want to go southbound on I-5, but you want to go to 4th Lane, westbound on 500, you can no longer into this. These improvements go directly to 4th Lane in the same manner you do today. In other words, as soon as you get to I-5, your next opportunity to get off is at Mill Plain. So the difference in routing is that I need to get off of 500 today at 15th Street and make your way into the neighborhoods for like the 39th Street area, upper 4th lane. That means 15th Street or 15th Avenue over to 39th Street. Or again, use the on-ramp to I-5 and head down to Mill Plain and then enter the neighborhoods in upper Vancouver, downtown, upper downtown, using that method. That's the biggest change there for this program area. Again, it does reflect a difference in the connectivity with a braided ramp. In the northbound direction, we still have auxiliary lane between SR, 4th lane and SR 500. In fact, there's 2 auxiliary lanes there today southbound. Let's see. I think that's most of the program area. Shilpa, did you notice anything that I missed walking through?
No, I think you covered them, Casey.
I didn't cover the Western shift. Yeah, options. So Shilpa walked through the slide that showed the options. So I've covered, discussed the bridge configuration options. Again, single level, double decker bridge, and the movable span. I have 2 options that I didn't cover, and that's the options of the C Street ramps. I talked a little bit about the C Street ramps and the SR14 interchange. We're also studying the option to not replace I-5 northbound to C Street ramp. That's this loop ramp on the east side that ends at C Street. An option that doesn't replace that. And a similar option that doesn't replace the C Street to southbound I-5 connection. So those 2 are covered in NEPA, not as both required or both not required, but an option from one or both not being replaced. Another option that's being studied in NEPA is what we call a westerly shift. And I'll zoom out just a little bit because this option is actually shown in the area map as well. In the vicinity of I-5 from roughly Evergreen Boulevard down to 5th Street, roughly, this is a very narrow area. And one thing I didn't mention, of course, is all of this has to be constructed while keeping traffic moving. We need to keep through lanes and moving in each direction. We can't debilitate the connectivity and continue to move folks and freight through the corridor. But one of the things we're studying within the program area, again, options really represent a set of bookends for the program to discover what impacts might look like between a set of options. And I mentioned the options for C Street, whether you have for them both replaced or only one replaced or none replaced. Westerly shift in alignment in Vancouver would have more westerly alignment through this specific area, affectionately called a pinch point for us. And that more westerly shift, again, provides a bookend of more impacts towards the west of the freeway or more impacts towards the east of the freeway or somewhere in between. So in the roll map, you see what's shown here is option A, and then above an inset of option B. And it's a little bit hard to detect in these maps, but will be described in greater detail for associated impacts of what the western shift does. But to give you a little bit more just general understanding of kind of a monument, there's a wall in front of the post hospital, if you're not familiar, and that wall in the easterly alignment no longer exists. We put a new wall behind that existing wall, moving closer to the post hospital. And in the westerly shift, we actually maintain that existing wall and build the improvements to the west of that wall. So it would shift, in essence, all the improvements west. Again, really think of it as a bookend of option or impacts of, to the study that we're looking at. I mentioned the auxiliary lanes, option of having 2 auxiliary lanes across the river. I mentioned the locations of park and rides as an option. And again, going through these options, want to make sure we're trying to get you familiar with, again, what improvements are being shown, what will be studied, what is being studied in NEPA, and those impacts associated with improvements as you look through the documents. Right. That really is most of what we're going through. Shilpa has one more, please.
So I just want to clarify again that the option B, what you see on screen on the website is you actually see 2 options there. One option is the C Street removal option, and the other one is the westerly shift that Casey talked about. They don't have to go together. They're completely mutually exclusive. It is just to compress the number of figures is what we have that shown as option A, option B, but just to note that option B does have 2 options in it from a NEPA standpoint. And one more thing is, so for the bridge configuration options, when we have single level, a double level, and the movable span, the impacts of it are pretty much just on the river itself. Once we get into Vancouver area or Hayden Island area, they come back and try and match existing. So mostly the difference that you see is going to be on the main river bridge itself, the single level and double deck option. And for the movable span, it's going to be very similar to the single level bridge option. We're going to be analyzing the movable span as an option to a single level bridge. So it's meaning we're not looking at a movable span with a double decker bridge option. So go ahead.
All right, Dr. Hunt, if there's any more questions about program area.
Meg.
It's me again. If we could talk about the SR 500 interchange and the lack of access to Fourth Plane or the International District of Vancouver, will there be any subsequent improvements to the 39th Street and potentially St. John's exits to compensate for the lack of access to Fourth Plane from SR 500 in the program area?
Great question, Meg. That's something that has previously been looked at, and it will be a discussion that's within the DSEIS as well.
Okay.
For there is an amount of vehicles that would take those. It's something that we previously studied and didn't find that there was an enormous amount of movement, but absolutely is something that needs to be discussed in there and will be.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm thinking access to the VA and to the International District, that would be pretty shut off if that is the maybe one exit option from SR 500, because that's a huge corridor up there. So there we go. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I didn't mention in that, I might just follow up. I didn't mention that you can go also more north, but it is also the same exit to go north I-5. Similarly, you take 15th Street, go north, and you can get up towards north of there. But yeah.
Just like one last thought there, more questions is just as the overall program standpoint, it's going to be like a long construction and we won't be able to construct all 5 miles at the same time. So it would have to be built in stages with the bridge going in first and then the other areas being that will follow the bridge construction. So this, again, what we're studying in the draft SEIs is pretty much that we're studying to see what does it mean to build any of these options. What are the impacts if we were to build and implement these investments? And then next year we'll be looking at how do we mitigate for those investments. And this is still very preliminary stages of design. So as we move forward, we still have more avenues from with NEPA, as well as design stages for everything like beyond the river bridge, to provide feedback, to analyze, and to answer the question like Meg that you just mentioned about the connections. So we're looking for feedback now, and we'll be looking for that as we move into design also, as we move forward.
I think I'll stop sharing if I want to get moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Thanks, Dr. Hunt.
All right, so feedback, thoughts, observations? Meg?
I'm so sorry that I am the only one talking today, but I'm really challenged with the idea of having even less accessibility from eastbound traffic to Fourth Plane. I think that's cutting off one of the lower income areas for, you know, a huge flow of East County folk who are coming to the 5 to do their driving, and having Fourth Plane be that much more harder to get to, which is where a majority of the lower income population in the city is. I struggle. I'm struggling with it. So just want to say it out loud.
Meg, this is Shona. I was gonna say the exact same thing. Like, that really is challenging for me as well. I think for the things that you mentioned, the VA hospital is there, and then there's been a lot of like development to improve that area, Fourth Plane and transit stations, widening the streets, and for it to be more difficult to access will be a challenge. And the community will probably be vocal about it.
Shauna and Meg, thank you also. Glad Meg also pointed out, I think at St. John's, and I failed to describe that direction as well. So I'm sorry I brought this back up again. Hopefully you can see my screen again. There was really the option to get westbound, again, SR 500 into that Fourth Plane was, again, to take St. John's, St. John's down to Fourth Plane, enter again like the VA or the Fourth Plane area, or even Rose Village. But those, of course, options. And thank you for mentioning that, Meg. I think you actually said it for me. I didn't want to describe that direction for folks that I missed that.
I'm thinking about that interchange too, and that goes just through a neighborhood. It doesn't even go through like a huge arterial street. Like, it is just houses on a one-way, or maybe even two lane both ways. But it's residential. So thinking of all of the SR 500 traffic going on that residential street, connect with Fourth Plane, it's, unless there's some major improvements to that intersection, you know, even good sidewalks would be an improvement in that area. So I would love to hear some more detailed prospective options for that upgrade.
I think you have make great points on that. Thank you for that.
So before we leave that topic, so is the reason that you will no longer have that access is because of the braided ramp?
The answer to that, Greg, is the direct access from 500 to Fourth Plane. That is the reason. So let me, I'm still sharing. This is something that was looked at extensively in previous planning program. And then let me talk about what was looked at. Again, this is a very short distance between 39th Street, SR 500, and 4th Plane. Very difficult area if you're traveling on I-5 or SR 500 in between those two. The challenges that present in that safety application is because it's such a short distance, there are limited options to address I-5. One of the things people have seen implemented since DRC though has been westbound SR 500 ramp meters. And so if you're familiar with that commute today, and I say commute because it's mostly on in the AM peak, is if you're coming westbound on I-5, you stop for most of the days, you stop for ramp meters, which are actually on SR 500. And then once the meter allows you to go, that does allow you to get on to I-5. We're actually assuming ramp meters in all ramps in the program area in both directions. When I say assuming, that we're planning on ramp meters, if they're not being currently installed, there is one currently being installed. For instance, 4th Plane to I-5 northbound. So other things that we've actually looked at providing a connection from that SR 500 westbound to I-5 southbound. We have actually looked at providing what we call a slip ramp, which is a connection from that SR 500 on the outside over to that braided ramp. And the trade-offs in that, as previously studied, were that we were impacting far more residential units, homes, along the frontage between 39th Street and 4th Plane. And this braided ramp, where it was actually disconnected between the two ramps, had the least amount of impacts while still addressing the problem between these two interchanges. We looked at several other options as well, potentially eliminating 39th Street. So the result of a couple of different options was to look at this braided ramp to say that was what we thought was the least amount of impacts. And this design is carried into the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program without additional study at this time. But we know that the city is very interested and has clearly been vocal about, we still want to avoid impacts and rightly so. We want to not displace folks. We don't want to do that just without meeting the needs of the program in that. Our challenge is to avoid those impacts at all possible, and if we can't, we need to minimize those impacts. Did I answer your question, Greg? We've looked at several options. They were done in previous studies, and it is the cause of the braid alone that that connection is not there. We've looked previously at having that connection back in this type of scenario, and it does cause additional impacts in the program to the residences there.
Understood. Yeah, this is kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't type situation. So.
Yeah. And Greg, this is also the location where we see a lot of crashes too. That's the main reason we're trying to separate them out, is like very short weaving distance, high volumes, and then we're talking about 2045. So it's mainly a safety reason why we're trying to separate the movements out.
Okay. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good conversation on that one coming up. So, thank you.
Shona, you had your hand up, and then Vicky.
I think we've talked about it extensively, so.
Okay, great. Vicky?
I have lived in Vancouver since 2008. I guess I feel more connected to Portland because I spend a lot of time over there. I've had a hard time understanding how Vancouver's laid out. You know, Portland, you've got quadrants that are northeast, southeast, that are kind of understandable. I think this presentation would be more digestible if there were landmarks, and I know that makes it so tiny, but recognizable landmarks that are identified on the map. Because sometimes, I mean, I don't know the major streets, and it would give me an idea, you know, like I probably could find the Veterans Hospital or Esther Short Park, or I don't know if that would be I think it would be helpful to me because it takes a while to kind of ferret out where are these streets and is that one I use, or where's the international district? You know, it'd be nice if there was a little area for that that's recognizable. It's just a suggestion.
Thanks, Vicky, for that comment. That's something we're going to take back, and we'll make sure that we get some landmarks identified on our roll map, our area map. Appreciate that. The street names are there, but they're very small. So it would be hard to read any of them, really.
Darcy?
I just wanted to second what Vicky just said. I am from Vancouver. I've been here almost my whole life, and it takes me a while to acclimate myself to these maps. It would be really helpful, I think, to a lot of people with some landmarks on there.
Shona?
Did I hear correctly that you guys are working on video to make it more digestible? People just have different learning styles and the way they consume information. So this is always challenging for me because I don't look at maps in this way. So the explanation, while I think you did a great job, I'm still lost at times, and an actual visual aid beyond the one dimension of a map might be useful.
Yes, we're working on the video, so it'll be on for right now. I'm sure we'll have other videos coming up, but for that right now, we are looking at the role map and kind of like walking people through how you can get from like one origin to a destination for each of the interchanges. So that way you can follow the map if you're trying to get to I-5 or coming from I-5 to Fort Plain or wherever you want to go to. So yes, and the same thing for active transportation too.
Hi, Ton.
Hi everyone, this is Hai. I'm just curious about slide 20. We say 23,000 worker live somewhere elsewhere, and then 8,000 work somewhere else, and 1,300 live and work in the areas. And I see that the date is from 2020. We've been a lot since then. We have the lockdown, the work from home, and then the return to work. So I think a lot has changed. I just wonder, will there be another round of updating the data so we have a better idea of how the traffic is going to be throughout the day?
Yes, we are, Jake, if I can lean on you on this one. I think we talked about this earlier today, and we are going to be updating that information but in 2024 as we get new information.
Got
the
it.
census. Yeah. So traffic-wise, we're getting that information from Metro and RTC, but the data that you're talking about, we'll be updating that from census.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Shilpa and Casey, do you have any more questions or to ask of the group?
No, I really appreciate the feedback as far as, kind of difficult to walk through this. I find that it's best in-person, one-on-one kind of discussion and pointing to a map. And one of the things we're trying to do is do that with folks in the neighborhoods, for instance, or the forums that we've had to have a physical, this physical map that's 6-8 feet long, and to stand above a table and to look at that and walk through, where are you coming from, where are you going to, and that's what we're trying to do. It is very difficult to walk through this because everyone has a personal, where I'm doing, what do I familiarize myself with. So I think the videos should help a lot with that, and I hope to encourage more folks to come to our neighborhood, to their own neighborhood meetings that we're coming to talk through that, and also to get in touch with us through info. But the other way is to get in touch with the program and make sure that we get those questions asked. You know how to get in touch with us and ask those direct questions. So thank you.
Hey,
And
and
we do appreciate the time. Oh, good. Go ahead. Yeah.
And also want to mention, like what Greg mentioned earlier, we do have office hours right now, and mostly we have the map over there. We have the physical map over there. So there are further questions. That's another avenue to look at the map, the physical map, and find out about the investments and how to get from one place to another too.
And I want to assure you that as EAG members, you are more than welcome to come to our office hours. So this is your community. So please, if you do have questions that in-person, specific one-on-one can help, please come to our office hours.
Do we have any public comment? Any people signed up for public comment?
We do not have anyone signed up for public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we can go a little bit longer, or we can shift. I just have a question. For you all as EAG members consuming this, because last month we looked at the Portland side, and this month I think with the focus on Hayden Island, and this side we're looking at the Vancouver side. I noticed for myself it was harder to digest, and I'm assuming it's just because I know one side more than the other. But is that yeah, was there something about just the way that we did that presentation that was different? Nicole?
I think it was easier for me to understand today's presentation because I live on the Vancouver side. So I think it was more location. And I've also only been in the Pacific Northwest for a year, literally. So all of it is new to me in some ways, but I can see how a video, or as Shona was saying, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, Shona Carter, how saying earlier, different options for explaining this to people would actually be a great idea, because everyone has a different way of processing it. I was able to keep up today, though. I think Casey did a great job trying his best to break it down as well as he could.
Great, thank you. So cool.
I also followed the presentation pretty well, but I also think that's because of context of living in Vancouver and the Vancouver side as well. But I do agree that the probably the difference is that it becomes so residential and there's so many different neighborhoods, from the Mill Plain area to Fourth Plain and all the way to other communities that kind of bridge over into Andreessen area. So I agree that possibly putting landmarks, maybe the different streets that are more well known, or the VA or Clark College would be really helpful to show the wider impact of the bridge replacement project.
Great. Thank you, Meg.
Well, and I think because there are what, 5 interchanges and several other bridges that we're talking about with changes to the program area, I think there's just naturally more to digest on this side of the river than what we had seen on Hayden Island and in like the Delta Park area on the Oregon side. So there's a lot, and it's real close. And Casey said it, a lot. Like they're all very close together. So seeing how things can be upgraded, how they can improve in such a small physical space, it's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be really important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate this. So, Jake, let's look at where we are in our agenda. So, Brent, we don't have any public comment right now.
Correct, we do not.
Okay. All right. So, and this is the public comment time. Through instructions are through Zoom, please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR EAG meeting webpage. Commentators will be allowed to turn on their webcams, but will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. By phone, dial 253-215-8782, meeting ID 986-0940-5983, passcode 701376. Dial *9 to raise your hand, dial *6 to unmute yourself. The facilitator will call on participants to provide comment. Please provide your name and affiliation, and commentators will be given 2 minutes to speak. All right, so we can close that slide, or we can take the slides down for a moment. Comment instructions to submit comment after the meeting. Fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. Before we go to the wrap-up slide, one question that I did have for Shilpa and Casey was thinking about sharing, getting feedback from people who are visually impaired. How are you all? Are you all creating a model of the different options and taking it places, or how are you all engaging around that?
That's a great question, Dr. Hunt. We do have a previous model that was built for partly for that reason. I guess mostly for that reason, as well as folks that could come could feel that and follow a path like that. We don't have it as a current, but for instance, in the program area in Vancouver, It would mostly cover the improvements that are being proposed. But I really appreciate the feedback on that as well. I think it's important that we have that as an option and moving forward as well. We will look into that for the future as far as when we move towards the FSEIS as well. So I really appreciate that comment, question.
Cool. Thank you.
Shilpa, you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it. Especially when you go to public hearings, I think that might be something we'll have to look into.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just say this though, and this has been a challenge for quite some time, and one of the difficulties in that is it is a very, this is a 5-mile stretch of the program area, and to have a scaled model, it could be very difficult to determine and follow any of those paths because of such a small scale of vertical compared to the horizontal. It's 5 miles and you don't go up and down much. So you get some relief out of the map, but I'm not experienced enough in that to reflect on if that's a great enough, but that's our best option in that, I believe. Love to hear back from those who might provide feedback on that. So, yeah.
Shona.
There is a school for the blind here in Vancouver that might be able to help identify ways to make it more accessible for them. So I would suggest outreach to that school.
Thank you, Shona. I think I also pronounced your name wrong too, so apologize for that.
Yeah, we had Matt here before, and Matt was a great resource as well. Matt Hines. All right, so let's close. So how about Emily? Thank you. Wrap up takeaways. So our meeting evaluation. So our poll, Brent. Our next meeting will be September 18th. September. And 3 takeaways from our time today. So that's always how we close. 3 takeaways. I can take down the slide. 3 takeaways from today. Leanne and Greg.
My takeaways for today was that there's the grants process that we're going through when looking for more support, and how much we have, the $600 million, if I wrote it down correctly, that we've already done. So that's a large amount of money. I enjoyed the hearing about all the parts for the icebreakers. Though it gave me some things to get out and do, because I'm not good at getting outdoors. And I did like the thought of how the video and everything, other ways for visual, because I am a visual person, but as everyone else stated, it's hard to picture things or picture landmarks. So that would be great for me to understand exactly what is proposed and out there. So thank you for everyone's help.
Great. Greg, and then John.
So my takeaway is the challenge of trying to convey this massive amount of information. And I think Casey and Shilpa did a great job. And we live this stuff every day. And this has been our careers, making improvements to transportation facilities. So it is very difficult at times to try and convey precise geographical and design information. So we will work on how we can be better for for this group as well as the general public. So that's my takeaway.
John.
Yeah, my takeaway, a couple things. First, a deep appreciation of everybody on the committee, but especially tonight, Meg, my all-star, asking tough questions. And although we are very far, we're not done, so we got a lot of work to do. And just looking forward to the community benefit agreement conversation. So we just got a lot of really good conversations ahead of us. So appreciate all the work of staff.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. All right. Thank you all, everyone. Very much appreciate you. Really, I really enjoy it when Shilpa and Casey, when you all come. There's a lot of information. I learn a lot. And just all of you, rock stars. So good night, everyone.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.